Yo, what's up guys? In today's video, I am going to be making a Clash Royale tier list with every single card in the game. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And to start off the video, we do have the regular archers. I feel like the regular archers are one of the most balanced cards in the game. They've never really needed a nerf, and they've never really needed a buff, I would say. Ever since the evolved archers came out, obviously nobody actually uses the regular archers, but I do feel like they're a pretty average card, just being overshadowed by quite a few things right now. So I'm going to put them maybe in the D tier, to be honest. I was about to put C tier, but I feel like, especially with giving them an evolution, they're not really a purpose to use regular archers over the Evo archers. Okay, we have the Archer Queen coming up next. The Archer Queen, I would say, is the second best range card in the game behind the Little Prince. The only problem is that the Little Prince is a champion as well as the Archer Queen, so you can never really get any good usage out of the Archer Queen because you just play the Little Prince instead. But I do feel like it's a really powerful card, and honestly, in my opinion, even broken. It did get an unnecessary buff recently, which made it even better than it already was, so I think I'll put the Archer Queen in the A tier here. Sorry for the voice crack. That was a crazy one. We have the arrows here. In my personal opinion, arrows are one of the best small spells in the entire game. Honestly, just one of the best spells in the game right now. Especially with all the bomber going around, the Evo bomber, the Evo archers. Not that the Evo archers actually die to it, but they kill the regular archers twice before they get the Evo. I think I'll put arrows in the S tier, to be honest. Arrows are so good. We have Baby Dragon. I feel like if you asked me a few months ago, I would put Baby Dragon in like the A tier, to be honest, but I feel like recently nobody actually uses Baby Dragon except Splash Shard. There's also been like a lot of new stuff that counters the Baby Dragon pretty good, so I think Baby Dragon's just a nice solid B tier card. Like, it's strong, but it's nothing like nerf worthy or anything like that. Like, everything in the A and the S tier right now, definitely in my opinion, could grab a nerf. Okay, we have Balloon. This is a weird one because Balloon is either really good or really bad. But if I had to like think about how Balloon is in the meta right now, there's a bit of Lava Loon. There's like a little bit of Loon Cycle, but not too much Loon Cycle. I think I'll put Balloon in the B tier as well. Balloon's not too crazy right now, especially with the Cannoneer Tower and how strong other air cards are. You can't really put Balloon too high. Bandit. I really like Bandit. Bandit's one of my favorite cards in the game, but I feel like, again, with the Cannoneer Tower coming out, it isn't like crazy good, but it's not bad either. I feel like Bandit's like a far above average card, but it's nothing like nerf worthy or anything. I think Bandit is just a solid A tier card up there with the Archer Queen. Okay, Barbarian Barrel. Man, Barbarian Barrel is one of the most annoying cards, I feel like. It's actually so good when you think about it. You get the utility of a log, but then you also get like a rolling barbarian that comes out, and you have like a really nice solid ground card that like defends bandits, royal ghosts, musketeers, and stuff like that when it's on your side of the map. So I feel like that's just a solid A or S tier card, but I think I'll just put it in the A tier behind the bandit. Although I could definitely see why somebody else would put it in the S tier. The only reason I'm not is because there's a lot of Goblin Drill right now, and a lot of the time, if you go Barbarian Barrel on a Goblin Drill, it just gets fireballed away, so I'm just going to have to put it in the A tier for now. Barbarian Hut. Okay. I don't even need to give an explanation on this card. It's just right in the F tier. It's trash. We have the regular Barbarians here. I feel like the regular Barbarians are quite weak. That's why I really like the Barbarians evolution, just because they evolved quite a weak card and kind of revived it from the dead and gave it like a great reason to be used compared to before, where honestly nobody was using Barbarians except maybe Lava Loon players. I think Barbarians are about D tier with the Archers. You could make the case for C tier, but I don't really see it. Here you have the regular Bats. I feel like with the popularity of the Cannoneer Tower and Top Ladder, the Bats are super good at Top Ladder, evolved or not. The Bats also get a lot of outcycle value, and what I mean by that is when you outcycle your opponent's counters, Bats will kill like 12, 14 elixir. They're literally just air skeletons, right? And they do a lot of damage because there's 5 of them for only 2 elixir, and they're quite good against the Little Prince. They're good at distracting. They're also good at baiting out spells. I think I'll put Bats in the highest of the B tier. The only reason I'm not putting them A tier is because since the Evolve Zap came out, a lot of people are running Zap, so That's obviously the best counter in the game to the bats. We have Battle Healer here. I feel like Battle Healer is probably the most underrated card in the game. Ever since the Little Prince came out, people have actually started to use Battle Healer in decks like Golem and E-Golem again, whereas before they kind of stopped running her, but I feel like it's super, super strong because you can just drop the Battle Healer when somebody poisons on it, and it will keep your Little Prince alive. And if you cycle 2 Battle Healers in a push, good luck defending. It's literally just infinite healing, and your stuff will like actually never die if they're around 2 healers. So I think I'll put her in the C tier, but no, I'm going to put her in the end of the B tier just because of how strong it is in a push. You have the Battle Ram. Battle Ram is quite average, I would say. It's gotten buffed so many times, but I feel like every single new card is quite good against Battle Ram. Battle Ram usually has trouble making it to the tower without the help of like many cards or quite a bit of outplay. So I think Barbarian, like the Battle Ram is like, I'd say C or B tier, but I think I'll put it in the C tier. It doesn't really get close to any of the cards in the B tier. Battle Ram is just about average. I wouldn't say it needs a buff anymore, but to make it better, you'd need some cards getting nerfed. Okay, we have the regular Bomber here. I feel like the regular Bomber is actually quite strong. Ever since the Bomber got a buff to one-shot Spirits, I've actually thought it was quite broken, honestly. Like, even without the Evo, I thought that it was a little bit unfair that Bomber one-shots Spirits, so I think I'll put him in the A tier. I could maybe drop him down to the B tier, but I think there's no reason to, especially with the Evo Bomber out. Sometimes people just prefer to not give the King Tower activation and run like the Wall Breakers evolution and the Skeletons evolution. Ooh, we have the Bomb Tower. Man, Bomb Tower is completely broken. I feel like ever since the Cannoneer came out, Bomb Tower has gotten a little bit less usage because now people just prefer to use the Tesla since they don't really need the splash damage anymore of the Bomb Tower because the Cannoneer just does so much damage per shot. But the nice thing about Bomb Tower is that it acts as a tank, it's a splash unit, and it has so much health. Like, a Hog plus EQ doesn't even get through a Bomb Tower, so I think I'll put Bomb Tower in the S tier, to be honest. Bomb Tower is so strong. Bowler. Man, Bowler kind of fell off a little bit. Ever since Evo Bomber came out, Bowler's kind of fell off for some reason, even though I feel like Bowler is quite good. I guess just you get the same like strength of the Bowler for only 2 elixir through the Evo Bomber. Bowler is really good against Goblin Drill, which is kind of the entire meta right now, but a lot of the cards have been quite good against the Bowler, although I don't see why a lot of people aren't using it in beatdown decks. But Bowler is one of the best range cards in the game when you pair it with the Tornado. It's so strong on defense. It's really good on offense. I would argue even unstoppable. I really don't like the Bowler. So I think I'll put the Bowler in the A tier, but it would be S tier if you asked me like literally 2 months ago. We have the Cannon. Man, I'm a big fan of the Cannon myself. I used the Cannon in all of my Logbait decks recently just because it is so cheap. I feel like that's the one thing the Cannon has going for it over the Tesla and the Bomb Tower and the Inferno Tower, of course, is that it's just the cheapest building in the game that's actually reliable in any type of way. And it's very good against ground cards. You can cycle it often because of how cheap it is. I guess it's just the substitute to Bomb Tower and Tesla if you need a cheap building more than like a very strong reliable building, because I'd say the Cannon, like the damage it does is pretty good. The health is quite weak though. It does nearly get one shot by a fireball, but when you pair it with fast cycle and quick pressure, it's really hard to get through. I'll put the Cannon in the B tier. Cannon Cart. Man, Cannon Cart was actually one of my most hated cards in the game for quite a while, but ever since the Evolved Knight and the Archer Queen came out, Cannon Cart has pretty much completely fallen out of the meta, and people are even asking for it to get buffed, but personally, I don't really think Cannon Cart needs a buff. I just think some of the broken cards in the meta need a nerf, like Evo Knight, Little Prince, Archer Queen, and stuff like that. I'll put the Cannon Cart in the C tier. Oh, it almost dragged my screen away. Okay, we have the Clone Spell. Man, do I even need to say anything? I'm putting that straight in the F tier. I feel like a nice way to buff the Clone would be to stop putting it in starting hands. Because just like the Mirror, since you can't mirror a card as your first play, you can't play it, so it's not in your starting hand. But for some reason with the Clone, it's in your starting hand, but you can't clone when you don't have anything on the field yet, so Clone shouldn't be in the starting hand. And I feel like with those Golem and Lava Hound decks that run Clone, sometimes even these other random decks that run Clone, it has a very hard time defending at the beginning of the game because sometimes their cycle gets jammed up by cards that don't even like work in the beginning. We have the Dark Prince. Ooh, Dark Prince is so good right now. Ever since the Goblin Drill became meta, he's actually been like very popular. He kind of rose from the dead ever since Goblin Drill became meta again. Dark Prince is quite good. I've said that for a while. I thought it was underrated, but there's really no reason to use him over the Evo Knight. But now you have all the reason in the world to use him over Evo Knight with the Goblin Drill being very, very popular. I think I'll put him in the A tier. I don't want to put him in the S tier just because he's only being used due to the meta, although he's still quite strong. Man, this is one of my favorite cards right here. The Dark Goblin. I don't like him as much as the Princess, but I do think he's quite nice in the sense of, like, he has his place in the game, but he kind of gets overshadowed by a few other cards in the game. He's being a little bit less outshadowed by the Little Prince now because the Little Prince did get that range nerf, and before the Little Prince did have the same range as a Dark Goblin, so what was the reason to use him over the Little Prince when she's a champion, has more health, and has the same range? But now with the Little Prince nerfs, the Dark Goblin has a little bit more of reason to be used. I think I'll put him in the C tier, but I would really love to put him in the B tier. I wouldn't say he needs a buff, though, in the C tier. Ooh, we have Earthquake. Man, I feel like Earthquake's not even that good right now. Hoggy Q has been struggling ever since the Cannoneer Tower and the Little Prince came out. Little Prince is just such a good counter to the Hog Rider. Same with the Cannoneer Tower. It's so hard to break through with Hog Rider versus the Cannoneer Tower. I was doing a 2.6 video and I could never get Hog hits on the tower, man. I think I'll put Earthquake in the B tier. Like, even with the help of the Earthquake, you're still not getting Hog hits. But if the meta was a little bit different, I could put Earthquake in the A or S tier. Okay, we have Electro Dragon. I feel like it's one of the most niche cards in the entire game. If you can kill it, Electro Dragon is so trash. It's just a walking King Tower activation and like a worse Baby Dragon, worse E-Wiz, worse everything. But if they can't really kill it, like if they don't have good counters to the E-Drag, it may be just the best card in the game. It's a really polarizing card and frustrating to go against because if you have good counters to it, it sucks. But if you have bad counters to it, it is so good. So I'm going to put it in the D tier, but depending on your deck, it could go right up into the A tier. Man, you guys might hate me for this, but I feel like Electro Giant's not really that good right now. Ever since the Cannoneer and the Little Prince came out, the E-Giant's been struggling quite a lot. It's just so hard for them to connect to the tower anymore with the Cannoneer out. I think I'll put E-Giant in the C tier, but trust me, guys, I don't think E-Giant's actually that weak. I just think because of the new stuff that they've added to the game, it's over in here. If, like, that stuff didn't get added, I'd put him right up in the A tier, so please don't roast me too hard. We have the E-Spirit. The E-Spirit was so good maybe like 2 months ago because it was super nice against bats and skeletons and wall breakers, but now with the Evo bats, E-Spirit kind of sucks because E-Spirit doesn't even come close to killing Evo bats ever, so it's just kind of like a worse Ice Spirit right now. I think I'll put him in the B tier. Man, a few seasons ago I was saying he was the best spirit, but Evo bats kind of kicked him to the curb and being, in my opinion, the second worst spirit right behind the Heal Spirit. Aw, man. This used to be my favorite card in the game back in, like, 2019. I always was hoping for the E-Wiz to come into my shop so I could buy him. I did end up getting him after a few months, and I actually never even used him anyway. I don't know why I was obsessed with him so much. I would always pick him in draft challenges, but the E-Wiz, he kind of lost that touch now. E-Wiz kind of sucks. Nobody uses E-Wiz. There is a lot of broken air counters instead of him that people would rather use. The only reason you ever really use him is if you want to reset an Inferno Dragon, but other than that, it's quite terrible. I'll put him in the C tier, as much as it makes me sad to put him there. He's just not great. We have E-Barbs. Ooh, E-Barbs are one of my, like, not favorite cards, but they're one of my, like, most fun cards to use. Like, I always have a lot of fun using E-Barbs. There's a lot of outplay potential with them, and when they're over-leveled, they're pretty much unstoppable. I've learned that through my mid-ladder videos. I'll put them in the B tier, just because I would say they're a little bit too strong to put in the C tier, but they're not strong enough to put anywhere else, although the meta doesn't really suit them right now. Ooh, we have Elixir Collector. This is going to be a controversial one, but if there was a nerf now tier, I'd put Elixir Collector in there. I just find it unfair how the Elixir Collector completely dominates when they don't have an Earthquake or a Poison or a Miner. And even if they do, you can usually quickly cycle another one and outcycle their counters for it. The only spell in the game that gets a positive trade on the Elixir Collector is the Earthquake, and it's always used in the most neutral deck. So I'll put Elixir Collector in the E tier, but if there was a Nerf Now tier, I'd just put him right there. We have E-Golem. Man, E-Golem's actually been quite strong recently, I feel like. Ever since the Cannoneer came out, E-Golem's been pretty popular because it has a hard time defending it. I think I'll put E-Golem in the A tier. I could put him in the S tier, but I think I'll relax now and not get a few people too mad. We have the Executioner. Man, just like the E-Wiz, he used to be so good, but ever since these new broken air cards came out, Executioner hasn't got any usage whatsoever. It's quite sad, honestly, because he used to be one of my favorite cards. I'll put him in the C tier with the E-Wiz. Fireball. Man, Fireball is just an S tier card, especially with all the Goblin Drill in the meta. There's just no really argument on why it's not one of the best spells in the entire game right now, right behind the Poison. It's so good paired with Goblin Drill, just so good in general, and so many decks, so versatile. Always getting great value. We have the Firecracker. The regular Firecracker, quite weirdly, is one of the better non-evos that have an evo, because sometimes you'd rather just go with like a Evo Knight, Evo Tesla, Evo Knight, Evo Skeletons, and just save your Firecracker to not be evoed, just because it is a little bit weaker than the other ones. But the regular Firecracker is so strong that you can even use her without an evo, so I think that speaks for itself to at least put it in the B tier. Same with the Bats. Firecracker and Bats are two of the best evolved non-evo cards. Fire Spirit. Man, Fire Spirit's just completely S tier right now. It's definitely the best spirit. It gets so much value in Goblin Drill, against Goblin Drill, and really against like Evo Bats. It one-shots Evo Bats unless they're fully healed. It's really, really strong on defense, and it's really nice paired with like Miner, Drill. I've even been putting it in Logbait a little bit, but I've been like putting it in and out just because I'm not really sure if it's too good in there yet. We have the Fisherman. Man, Fisherman is one of my most least liked cards in the game. I feel like whenever I have a nice push going, my opponent just goes Fisherman in the middle and defends everything. Or if I'm playing Hog Rider, they just activate the King Tower. It's quite underrated. For only 3 Elixir, Fisherman offers a lot of utility. It gets so much value for only 3 Elixir. I'll put him in the A tier. Flying Machine. Man, if this was a most hated list, I'd put him all the way up in the S tier. Flying Machine is probably top 3 most hated cards for me, and for certain periods of time, it's my #1 hated card, depending on what the meta is. But if I'm being truthful here, Flying Machine isn't really that strong anymore, especially with all the Little Prince, all the Bats, all the Firecrackers, the Fireballs, the Poisons, and the Teslas too. I'm gonna put it in the C tier. As much, like, as happy as it makes me to put it all the way in the C tier, it's just not really that good. Okay, we have the Freeze spell here. Man, Freeze is just kind of like a meme card. Most of the time you use Freeze, you're just trying to cheese your opponents. You're not really like, you think of like a good deck, hey, let me put a Freeze in here and make it better. You kind of think like, how can I get cheap and easy wins? I'm going to put the Freeze spell in here. I feel like Freeze spell is just straight average, or maybe a little bit below average. So I'll put it at the top of the D here, but it's not really nothing crazy. Man, Furnace, straight in the trash receptacle. Straight in the trash. That card needs a buff. As much as I hate it, that card needs a buff ASAP. We have the Giant here. Man, Giant has actually been quite strong recently, ever since Giant Graveyard became meta. I wouldn't say it's better than Goblin Giant, but I would say it's a solid A tier card right now. Ever since Giant got that buff to have a bigger range, it's been so hard to actually defend, because you can't really have the Giant be targeted by 2 buildings. I mean, by 2 towers and the building at the same time, which makes it quite a lot better against all building decks. And it also hits the tower from further away too, which gets you those last second shots and those quicker Giant locks. We have the Giant Skelly. Man, when the Giant Skelly got buffed a few months ago, I was so happy and so excited to use it, because it actually is one of the more fun cards in the game. It's so funny and so cool to use, but the only problem with the Giant Skeleton is that there's just too many cards right now that counter him and that have a better fit for him in the meta, like the Evolved Knight, for example. I think that's the main one really kicking it out of the meta. I'll put him in the B tier, but man, he should probably go in the C tier, but I feel like he's too like naturally strong to go down there. We have Snowball. Snowball is actually really good. Ever since it got that buff, I found it to be quite strong. It does a little bit less tower damage, but for a longer slow duration, which is so good because nobody really uses Snowball for the damage anyway. I would say Snowball is a solid A tier card. It's going to have it in the A tier right there. Not really too much to say about that. Just one of the best small spells of all time. Okay, we have the Goblin Barrel. Man, I love Goblin Barrel. It's my favorite type of deck in the game. I love Logbait, but Goblin Barrel is so weak with all these new cards that counter it, like Evo Bomber. Even Evo Tesla full counters Goblin Barrel. Like, if that doesn't say enough, I don't know what does. Goblin Barrel is just a straight D tier card, and I would say it needs a buff, to be honest. Or an evolution. Maybe don't buff it and just give it a straight evolution, because this card is so mid. Honestly, even below mid, like, I find myself struggling to get Goblin Barrel damage on the tower. We have the Goblin Cage. Man, Goblin Cage is so frustrating. I hate when they go Goblin Cage first play, and you don't really have any good cards, and they can just, like, build up a big push super early on with the Goblin Cage. But other than that, it's not really too great on defense or offense. It's only really good in the beginning of the game. I'll put it in the B tier, because after single elixir, the card gets so much worse. Okay, Goblin Drill. Ever since Goblin Drill got that buff, it's just straight S tier, man. Goblin Drill is way too strong. Needs a huge nerf. They did a rework to it like a few weeks ago and just called it a rework, but that thing was a huge buff. Man, Goblin Gang, same boat as Goblin Barrel. Ever since a lot of these cards got buffed or introduced, it's been so weak. I'll just put him in the C tier just because it is a little bit better than every other card in the D tier, and I'd say it's on par with about the Dark Goblin, the E-Wiz, the Battle Ram, and stuff like that. Man, we have the Goblin Giant. Goblin Giant needs an emergency nerf. The last two nerfs they did to the Goblin Giant just haven't been close to enough, and I'm really hoping for an even better Goblin Giant nerf in the future. Goblin Hut, man, straight in the trash. Straight in the trash, and just no argument about that one, again. Okay, we have the Goblins. Man, I have like a small hatred towards the regular Goblins. They've been getting the Goblin Barrel and the Goblin Gang nerfed for quite some time now, so they are really good, and there's a reason why they keep getting nerfed. I'd say they're an A tier card right now, just for the simple fact of being 2 elixir and doing a crazy amount of DPS. They've gotten so many nerfs and still need more. Golden Knight, the buff they did to it was pretty cool. I guess it was an interesting idea on making the ability cooldown a bit shorter, making the card stronger in the game, but not making it like completely game breaking like it used to be, which is like a nice idea with the buff, but it didn't really do too much, to be honest. It's been buffed 2 balances in a row, and it's still quite average. I'd say it's better or on par with the cards in the C tier, but it is a champion that gives 3 card cycles, so I'll put him in the B tier just for the fact that he gives the 3 card cycle. We have Golem. Golem alone isn't quite good, but Golem has quite a lot of good support units right now. I think that's B tier. I'd say that's B tier worthy. It has so much good support cards right now. So strong. We have Graveyard. Man, I thought the one skeleton nerf wasn't really going to do anything, but it's doing a little bit. Normally, I'd put Graveyard in the S tier on basically every single list, but now I think I have to put him in the A tier instead of the S tier, but Graveyard is so lucky, man. I want to put in the S tier so bad, but I think I'll just have it in the A tier for this time. We have the Guards. Guards are quite good in competitive play, but on the regular, like ladder and grand challenges and Path of Legends, they're quite mid, I guess. They're not like too good. They're not too bad. I'd say they're better than the Goblin Gang though, so I think I'll put them in the B tier. Heal Spirit. Like I said before, the worst spirit in the entire game by far, no questions asked. I'll put it in the C tier just because it does have the healing factor of you can quickly win a game because of it, or undeservingly win a game because you get a heal spirit jump. But man, how often does a heal spirit jumping win you the game? Not very often. I don't think it needs a buff just because it is a healing card, and I've never liked healing cards. I've always been against them, but there's no questions asked that it's quite weak. We have Hog Rider. Hog Rider is so good, but at the same time so bad just because of what's going around in the meta. I think he's a solid A tier win condition, although he could easily be S tier right now. I mean, not right now, but in like a different season, he could so easily be S tier. We have Hunter. Man, Hunter's been going out quite sad. Not the YouTuber, of course, but the card, Hunter gets no damage versus the Cannoneer Tower if you drop it at the bridge by itself. It literally gets no damage. There's so many better air cards than him. I think Hunter's just a average card that kind of lost love for just because nobody uses him anymore. There's no reason to use him over like Phoenix and stuff like that. Okay, we have the Ice Golem here. Man, Ice Golem got a nice buff, but it's still so bad. I feel bad for the Ice Golem. It's one of my favorite cards, actually. I feel like it's so unique with the utility, but there's literally no decks besides 2.6 that it's good in, and 2.6 is quite weak right now. I'll put Ice Golem in the D tier. Ice Spirit. Dude, Ice Spirit is so good. I want to put Ice Spirit in the S tier, but I feel like Fire Spirit holds up that spot quite well, so I'll put Ice Spirit in the S tier, but I feel like all the spirits are so good besides the Heal Spirit, and they just rotate places depending on what's popular in the season. Ice Wizard. Okay, well, speaking of Hunter, Hunter's the only player in the game who uses Ice Wizard, but he uses him quite well, and he actually makes me think that Ice Wizard isn't even bad, but maybe that's just him being good at the game. I'm not exactly sure. I think I'll put Ice Wizard in the C tier, though. Putting the Ice Wizard up to the cards in the B tier would just be kind of nonsense, to be honest. There's no need for that. It's still quite average and could honestly use maybe a small buff, but I wouldn't complain if it didn't, just because I'd say it's an average card. Inferno Dragon. Oh, Inferno Dragon fell off recently. In the past times, Inferno Dragon would be an A, maybe even S tier card, but with what's popular in the season, Inferno Dragon doesn't really get too much value. I'll just slide her up to the B tier just to kind of sit in there, even though she might not even deserve that spot. Inferno Tower, okay. Well, Inferno Tower is probably the worst building, like, when you don't count spawners, I would say. It's worse than the Cannon, worse than the Goblin Cage, Tesla, Bomb Tower. Doesn't really have much usage anymore because with the introduction of the Cannoneer Tower, the Tesla is just as good versus the air decks as the Inferno Tower once was, so there's no need for it because it's just safer against everything else. So I think I'll put the Inferno Tower in the B tier. Still think it's too strong to be put in the C tier, but it's kind of sucks, man. We have Regular Knight. Man, Regular Knight is actually quite strong. You don't really mind having the Evo or not having the Evo. Obviously, the Evolved Knight is a straight broken card, but even the Regular Knight is quite good, actually. I think I'll put the Regular Knight in the A tier. I wouldn't put him in the S tier, but he's definitely the best non-evolution that we've seen so far on the list. Lava Hound. Man, I'd say Lava Hound's better than Golem, so I can't put her anywhere under the B tier, but there's no way that Lava Hound is a A tier card, so I'll just slide her up to the B tier. Lightning. Man, Lightning was so good like 3 months ago in Electro Giant, but now Lightning has really no reason to be used with all the popular low elixir range cards like Bomber and Little Prince. Lightning just gets no value against those type of cards. They're just too cheap. I think Lightning just has to be in the, I'd say the C tier right now, but it could definitely be B, A, or even S tier depending on the season. We have Little Prince. Man, I don't even need to say anything. Playing Little Prince is like having 9 cards in your deck. That's the thing that gets me with that card, is that you have the LP in your deck, you have 9 cards. It acts as your ground tank and your air card, so you can just fit another card in there. Usually it's a cycle card, so you can have a quicker cycle. It's just so unfair, in my opinion, that the LP just covers 2 types of units. It needs a nerf really, really badly. Okay, we have the Lumberjack. Lumberjack is a above average ground dealing damage card. Definitely not better than maybe a Knight or something like that. Maybe on par with like maybe a Valkyrie. Probably a little bit better than a Valkyrie, but it's definitely like not up there with any of the Evos. It's probably about the same as a Mini P.E.K.K.A. I think I'll put the Lumberjack in the B tier, just because it is a little bit better against Goblin Drill than some of the other tanks, and it does have its place in the game. Magic Archer. Man, I love using Magic Archer. I hate facing it, though. It did get a buff, like, maybe this month that made it shoot a little bit quicker. So just for that, I think I'll put her at the end of the A tier. Actually, no, I'll put her in the B tier just because she's just not better than the Evo Bomber. Evo Bomber is just a significantly better Magic Archer. Okay, we have the Mega Knight. Man, don't hate me, guys, but Mega Knight I don't think is in the S tier right now. I think Mega Knight is above average and pretty good, but it's nothing like too crazy. I think he would either go in the bottom of A tier or the top of B tier. So I think just to be safe, I'll put him in the bottom of the B tier, but maybe if the Little Prince got nerfed, he'd be in like the top half of the A tier. Mega Minion. Man, Mega Minion has no reason to be used in the game anymore, except in maybe like Lava Hound, but other than that, there's literally no reason to use Mega Minion. It's such like it's just such an average card that gets outshined by so many different things. I think I'll put her in the C tier. It's just average. Doesn't exactly need a buff, but could be better if there wasn't so many broken cards out right now. And we have the Mighty Miner. If you guys didn't know, this is my favorite card in the entire game, but it's just so weak, dude. It's so weak. It has no health. Ever since it got that health nerf, it's been like one of the worst mini tanks, like in terms of like ground tank and having a lot of HP in the entire game. I think I'll put him in the end of this, although I should put him in the D tier. Miner. Dude, Miner's the most consistent card in the entire game. I've never even made Miner Poison, but I finished top 10 with it 4 times. Every time I've tried to get a good finish with Miner Poison, I've got it. It's just so easy to use and so broken, in my opinion. We have the C tier. I mean, not the C tier. We have the Minion Horde, sorry, which I think is just a C tier card. Man, I guess we do have the C tier. It's just so bad right now. It's just bad because of the meta. Pretty average card. I don't think it needs a buff. Doesn't need a nerf either. And it's just a little bit worse than its brother minions that are right next to it. I think I'll put the minions in the B tier. Minions do have a little bit of a better usage than the Minion Horde, and they're just cheaper, which is nice. Okay, we do have the Mini P.E.K.K.A, which I was just talking about. I think Mini P.E.K.K.A is about on the same strength as all the C tier cards. It's not really better than any of the B tier cards if I look at them right now, but I would say it is better than maybe some of the C tier cards, but it's not even better than all of them, so I'll put him in the C tier. Okay, we have the Mirror. Man, Mirror's going straight in the trash. Nobody's used Mirror ever since it got nerfed to going to level 15 again instead of level 16. Monk. Man, Monk actually got quite a nice buff, and it's actually been seeing a little bit of play. The only problem is that the Little Prince is also a champion, and it's by far the best champion, so people haven't really seen a reason to use the Monk, but I'd say he's a pretty solid B tier card. We have the Mortar. Mortar's quite good when it's not evolved either. The Evolution Mortar is broken in my opinion, but even the non-evolved form of the card I think is actually pretty good. Maybe not right now, but I think I'll put the Mortar in the B tier. Although I think I've put Mortar in the S tier in some of my other lists. Man, Mother Witch, probably one of my most hated cards in the game. I'll put her right up in the... I'm going to honestly put her in the A tier. That card is so frustrating. It's one of the most bailout cards in the game, as in... You're struggling on Elixir, they have us like a tiny bit of swarm on the field. Let's just put a Mother Witch, spawn a Royal Hogs in front of my tower, and just stall out for like 15 seconds while I build my Elixir back up. I hate that card, man. Musketeer. Musketeer is better than all the C tier cards, but it's being overshined by the Little Prince again, man. How is it every time any ranged unit comes up, even ground units, you always hear me say the Little Prince? If that doesn't show that it needs a nerf, I think nothing does. I'll put Musketeer in the B tier, even though she doesn't really get that much usage right now. Night Witch. This is an interesting one right now. Because of the Cannoneer Tower, Night Witch is like an A tier card, but if you have the Princess Tower, it's like a C tier card. So I think the best middle ground for the Night Witch is to just put her in the B tier. Although, depending on your trophy range, she'd be better or worse. So, just to be fair, I'll put her in the B tier. Although, if I was talking about my ladder range, I'd put her in the A tier. We have P.E.K.K.A. Man, P.E.K.K.A did get a really nice buff, but I still think that it struggles with all of the counters in the meta. P.E.K.K.A will never be good no matter how many buffs you give it unless you actually nerf the cards that are super broken against it. So, P.E.K.K.A's just C tier still, unfortunately. Phoenix. Phoenix, once upon a time, was probably the most broken card the game's ever seen. But now Phoenix has been toned down so much and just a crazy amount where I would say Phoenix is still good. Phoenix is still a great card. It has amazing potential, just depending on what's popular in the game. I'll put Phoenix in the B tier. I really want to put him in the A tier. It's okay though. Poison, man, this is the quickest S tier I think I've ever done. Poison is so broken. Definitely the best spell in the entire game right now. Dude, please go. Okay, there we go. Definitely the best spell in the entire game. We have Prince. Prince kind of sucks. Prince, with all the skeletons and the Evo skeletons going around, Prince just sucks, dude. It's too easy to like distract and defend. I'll put Prince in like the bottom of the C tier. So bad. Princess, man, as much as it hurts for me to do this, Princess is just straight a D tier card. It's just so below average. It's worse than all of these other cards. It's just so average. We have the Rage. Okay. Rage actually did get a nerf, and it's still so broken when you pair it with Goblin Giant, E-Golem, even some Golem decks, and even like a few other types of decks. Rage is pretty strong right now. It has a great spot in the meta, which I'm actually happy about because Rage was so bad for such a long time. Honestly, I think years, but now it's honestly getting a lot of usage. I think I'll put Rage in the A tier. Okay. Let's see what we have next. Ooh, we have... Damn, there's still a lot of cards left, actually. Okay, the Ram Rider. Ram Rider, same case as the Battle Ram. It's just quite weak. There's no really reason to use it right now in the meta. It just gets completely wrecked by the Little Prince and the Cannoneer. Put it in the C tier next to the Battle Ram. Rascals. Man, the Rascals, same problem. The Little Prince ability kills them. There's too many cheap counters to Rascals, though. Rascals just don't get their value anymore with the popularity of Arrows and Log. They just never really get any value. They're just instantly wiped off the board. I think I'll put them in the C tier because if they did do like an overhaul to the meta, they'd be B or A tier, but as of right now, I can't really justify putting them above the C tier. Rocket. Man, Rocket, I would honestly argue being on the same level as Furnace and Mirror. I'm just going to put Rocket in the F tier. Rocket sucks, dude. Rocket's only good on defense, but at top ladder, when you are doing, like, spell cycling, I guess, Rocket always falls short, and every other spell comes out on top, and on top of always falling out short and being the most expensive, like, on top of being the worst one and least damaging one, in my opinion, like, obviously in terms of one, it does the most damage, but in terms of how many get down in a game, it does the least damage, and on top of that, it's the most risky one to play on the tower, too. Okay, we have Delivery here. Man, Delivery is actually so good. Delivery is actually really strong. I think I'll put that straight up in the A tier. Oops. Delivery gets a lot of value on defense no matter what. There's never really a time where I'm like, man, I have a Royal Delivery. Even against Goblin Barrel, I'm quite fine with having it. We have the Royal Ghost. It's my favorite card to make the noises of. Ooh. I think that I'm quite good at it. Royal Ghost is actually quite good right now with all the Goblin Drill in the meta. I mean, it was even good before that, honestly. It's one of the few bridge spam cards that are actually very strong still. I think I'll put him in the A tier as well. Man, this meta is so strange. You have a lot of good cards in the C tier and a lot of mid cards in the A tier just because of the meta. Regular RG. Man, regular RG is honestly not that good. You even have people not putting the Evolution RG in back when there was only one Evo. Now, even with two Evos, you still see people not using the Evolved RG in Royal Giant decks. Although, Royal Giant has been making a comeback as of the last season and a half. So I'll put the regular RG in the B tier because of that. Piggies. Man, Piggies are so good, actually. Piggies are so strong. I find them so hard to defend sometimes, especially when you don't have the right cards. Even with a Bomber Little Prince meta, Piggies are still coming out on top. I'll put them in the A tier for sure. We have regular Recruits, probably one of my most hated cards in the game. I would put them in the S tier just for that reason, but Recruits, when they're not evolved, are quite average, to be honest. Okay, we have the Skeleton Army. Skeleton Army, again, is quite an average card, I would say. Not really nothing too special about it. Not too bad either. Just in the C tier. Okay, we have the Skeleton Barrel. Man, Skeleton Barrel is just another get in the trash card, to be honest. Somehow even worse than the Goblin Barrel, and I'm not sure how that's possible because that is a pretty big feat to beat. I'll just put it in the F tier. Okay, Skeleton Dragons. Ooh, they're actually pretty strong. Ever since they've gotten those two buffs, they've been quite good. They're just a straight solid A tier card. When you don't have Fireball, they're so hard to kill and get so much value. Them surviving Arrow Zap is probably the best buff they've ever given them. Skeleton King. Skeleton King is pretty nice. Obviously, you have the Little Prince holding it back, but other than that, I'd say it's up there with the Monk. Maybe even a little bit better than the Monk. Just doesn't get too much usage right now due to the Little Prince. Skeletons, man, even regular skeletons are like an S tier card. I'll drag them all the way up to the S tier. Wait, what? Dude. Okay. Oh, I'm fine. I was going to be so sad if that didn't work. Okay, let's just put those up to the S tier. Man, if I had to restart this whole tier list, I was going to be so sad. Alright, we have the Sparky. Man, Sparky is not that good. I feel like Sparky needs a little bit of some help here, just because the meta is completely destroying it. Sparky's average, I would say. Spear Goblins. Spear Goblins were so good a few months ago. Now they're quite decent, I guess. I'll put them in the B tier, although I feel like they deserve an A tier placement. unfortunate that they've kind of fallen off a bit. We have Tesla. Regular Tesla is actually pretty good. I think I'd put regular Tesla in the A tier, maybe a little bit below the bomb tower from the S tier. And Evo Tesla coming out, I'd honestly say if you had to compare like reason to use, I'd rather use the regular Tesla and get a different evolution. But if you're comparing strength, obviously the Evo Tesla's better. We have the Log. Man, this is the best spell of all time, probably. Maybe not the current best spell, even though you could argue it's the current best spell. I would say that this is just like an all-around S tier card, and there's no argument to be made about the Log. The Log's just everywhere. 3M. What a joke of a card. 3M sucks, dude. 3M needs a buff. I'll just put 3M in the D tier with all these other bad cards. Tombstone, I'd say it's a B tier card. Normally I'd put it in the A tier, but ever since the Tesla and the Bomb Tower have been kind of dominating the building meta, no point to use the Tombstone. Tornado. Man, Tornado's an S tier card. If you had to ask me like 5 cards to nerf, Tornado would definitely be in there as long as I wasn't like raging over random cards at the time like Flying Machine. Tornado is just so broken, man. It's always used in the like decks that get crazy defenses and just getting King Tower activations, and they're the decks that always lock you down without the ability to ever break through. Valkyrie. Valkyrie's probably on the C tier, to be honest. Regular Valkyrie is quite bad. Wall breakers, oh, nice voice crack again. Man, hopefully you guys don't do a voice cracking count in this video. We have wall breakers. Regular wall breakers are so good. They're definitely an A tier card, maybe even S tier. I'll just put them in the A tier because I feel like a lot of the cards in the S tier just outshine the regular wall breakers, but man, the wall breakers are strong. Witch, that's another bad card. Put that right in the D tier. Wizard, back-to-back D tier cards. Man, Wizard and Witch, they both, I wouldn't say Wizard needs a buff just because of how terrorizing it is at mid-ladder, but Witch definitely needs some kind of help. We have Expo. Man, a lot of you Expo lovers are going to hate me for this, but Expo is definitely just an average card. A lot of counters to the Expo do need a nerf, but I wouldn't say that Expo needs like a crazy big buff. We have Zap, okay. Regular Zap is quite bad, to be honest. Evo Zap has revived it, though, which is quite nice. I love that. I think I'll put Zap in the D tier. Probably the worst spell in the game behind, like, all of the joke spells. Also Rocket. I'd say Zap is better than Rocket, but it's better than everything else. Zappies. Honestly, Zappies would normally be B tier, but this meta, they're literally never used. I can't even remember the last time I faced a pair of Zappies, so I'll just put them in the C tier. We have the Princess Tower. I mean, I guess the Princess Tower is A tier, right? I mean, like, why would the Princess Tower not be A tier? I mean, S tier, sorry. I mean, it's, like, just so good. It's just the regular tower. Obviously, Cannoneer is better, but I still don't see the Princess Tower not being an S tier. Then, as you guys know, the Cannoneer is so strong. A lot of you guys actually don't understand why Cannoneer is so good, but at top ladder, Cannoneer is just unstoppable. It's just so hard to get through the Cannoneer. Now we're to the evolution portion. This is going to be fun. I'm going to rank them based off of their evolution form. Not really in comparison to like each other, I guess, like when they're not evolved, but when they're evolved is how I'm going to be ranking them. Evolved Barbarians. Well, I guess technically all the evolutions are S tier, but I will put them in order, I guess. I'll put them in like order of best to worst in my opinion. So I'll go Barbarians and then Skeletons. I think Skeletons are the best evolution right now. So I'll put the Skeletons ahead of the Barbarians like this. Firecracker. Man, Firecracker is actually like I was saying earlier, it's quite a good evolution, but sometimes it's even better to not use it as the evolution. I think Firecracker is a little bit better than the Barbarian, so I'll put her right in the middle there, if it would let me. There we go. Okay, I guess you guys are kind of getting an evolution tier list in here too. Evolution RG, it's been seeing a lot more popularity as of recently, which is quite nice. I'm not happy about it because I don't really like Royal Giant, but I'd say it's the worst on here so far. Maybe a bit better than Barbs, to be honest, just because of the new meta decks. We have Evo Mortar. Man, Evo Mortar, it fell off just a tiny bit with the new decks. There has been a new Evo Mortar, Evo Zap deck that's quite cool to see, but other than that, it hasn't really been too strong. I'll put it behind the RG just for the current meta. We have Evo Knight. Man, even with all the nerfs that the Evo Knight has gotten, it's just been still so good and so strong either way. I'll put it behind the skeletons right there. Evo Recruits. I thought the Evo Recruits nerf wasn't really good at all, but I'm happy with the second nerf that they've done to them. It makes them a lot more tolerable. I'd put them a little bit worse than the RG and the Firecracker, to be honest. They got quite a substantial nerf. I'll go for the Evo Bats here. Evo Bats are very, very good in my opinion. The most underrated evolution in the game right now. I'd put it above the Firecracker. I find that obviously with the regular bats, the Cannoneer is so good, but once you get to your evolved ones, only really Zap is reliable against them. Zap and arrows. We have the archers here. Archers are so strong too. I feel like what makes them so strong is that you're able to split them and the crazy DPS that they do right before they get spelled down, but they're always getting a positive trade when they're getting spelled down, which is nice. Evil Ice Spirit, man. I love the buff that they gave to it, and I love the idea of it, but it's still just the worst evolution in the game. Evo Valkyrie. They actually gave the Evo Valkyrie quite a nice buff. I'm happy with how they buffed the Evo Valkyrie. It's not broken. It's not like weak or anything like that. I'd say it's better than the Barbarians. No, it's not, to be honest. Actually, maybe it is. I think I'll put it right behind the RG, actually. I'm kind of underrating it right now. Oops, behind the RG. There we go. I think I was underrating it there for a second. Evo Bomber, man, this honestly is arguable as the best evolution. I think Evo Bomber is still so broken, and I really hope it gets another nerf. It's worse on offense, but it still applies the same amount of pressure. It's just a little bit better, no, much better on defense, so it got I would honestly even argue a buff. We have Evo Wall Breakers here. Man, Evo Wall Breakers are so good. They do way too much damage. I'll put it right behind the Bomber, I guess. I used to think Bomber was worse than the Wall Breakers, but as of recently, I'd say the Wall Breakers kind of, like, I love them. They're so broken, but Evo Bomber has just been hitting recently, especially since the Goblin Drill has became meta. Evo Tesla, I like Evo Tesla. I wouldn't say it's better than the Ice Spirit. I mean, I wouldn't say it's better than the Mortar, though. Okay, and finally, we do have the Evo Zap here. Evo Zap, I love the concept. It's quite unique, and I like how they buffed, like, a bad spell with the evolution form. I'd say it's better than the recruits, and that is my tier list. So thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.